Hello and welcome to Open Source Workplace. I'm glad to bring another new guest to the show, Mark Bloom from Arent Fox. Mark, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, all things considered. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
How are you?
no, good. I'm doing great. It's great to see you. You live around the corner from me, so
That's
it's
right.
nice to be able to do these videos. But your family, all safe and well?
So far, everybody's safe and well, adjusting to having a bunch of college students home, but it's working out.
Good, good, good. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. So you're a partner at Arent Fox, as I just mentioned. Is there a specific area of law you focus on?
There is, so I co-lead our construction practice group, and we are lawyers to the construction industry. And so we get to work on all kinds of construction projects, some owners, developers, contractors, design professionals. And it spans the spectrum of projects from commercial buildings to sports arenas to power projects. And so we probably have seen every kind of project you can imagine.
Well, that is a wide spectrum of exposure you have, and obviously that's who your clients they turn to you. So, look, I appreciate you making the time, and obviously this is going to be a weekly segment we're going to try and create. So, obviously, what that allows us to do is to try and give progress as things change, things ever evolving. And your area of focus is it New York, is it the US, just as we sort of set parameters as because I just want to be careful that we're not overreaching and people take the guidance you're given and sort of this where it should be focused on.
Sure, understood. So Arent Fox is a national firm. And so while we are in New York, my partners and I in our construction group, which is a core, we have construction people around the country. And so our projects really do span across the country.
Got it. Got it. Thanks for the clarification. So
Sure.
up to now, I mean, obviously, we look across the states, a lot of projects, construction, all that stuff. People are stay at home. What sort of questions are your clients coming to you with to date that sort of you've had to provide guidance as it relates to construction projects?
So the most important question we've been getting, and it really started obviously a couple of weeks ago, is are we allowed to proceed with our construction project? And if they are allowed to proceed, the next question they ask is, well, how do we do this safely? What can we do to help to ensure that the project could continue to move forward? And then the last question is really, what do they need to look out for? They know that there will be claims, they know there will be delays. And so how do the various project participants protect themselves while the project is ongoing? And so there are a lot of nuances in those questions, and everything is very project specific, but I would say those are the ones that we've been getting the most frequently.
Okay, and as we sort of look at where we are today, April 21st, and we know there are lockdowns in play. We know that certain states are looking to open. So if projects wanted to go forward, safety obviously is a huge aspect. Is there certain provisions within the existing contracts, or is there certain things that, be it construction companies or be it end users, occupiers, is there certain provisions that they want to be looking at in their contracts or thinking about if they move forward with other contracts?
They should. And of course, first, the question about whether or not they're allowed to move forward, they that changes frequently. So we've had clients on day one where they were permitted to move forward with the project. And then 3 days later, a new executive order was issued by the state or municipality, suddenly telling them that the project had to stop. And so that is something that has to be monitored frequently. Regarding project safety, that should always be at the forefront of everybody's minds, whether it's the owner or the construction team. And that's not just because of COVID, but for any reasons, having a safe project site is important. The contracts, most of them, will put the responsibilities for having safety on the general contractor or the construction manager. And so there are provisions in just about every contract that talks about having a safety program. And usually it's overseen by the GC or the CM. There may be reporting requirements to the owner. The GC or the CM may have its subcontractors also be a part of that program. And so traditionally there would be, uh, you may have a safety consultant, or it may be through those companies, and they'd have weekly meetings. They'd be monitoring what's going on the site, and they would be having reporting obligations. Now with COVID, the one of the things that they get some guidance from is that the states in their executive orders usually are incorporating the guidelines from the CDC, from
Mm,
OSHA, and even the state health departments. Um, and even if those guidelines aren't incorporated right into the executive orders, they still should be followed. It's these guidelines were developed by experts on dealing with worker safety, and so you wind up having, in the situation now, is reminding the construction team, if they haven't done so already, of adopting policies that incorporate those guidelines from the CDC, OSHA, and state government.
mm. So then with this pause, with the enhanced safety protocols that will likely be in place whenever return to work is allowed to happen and projects are allowed to move forward, one would expect that construction timelines that may have been agreed within contracts maybe need to be reviewed. How are construction companies, how are your other clients sort of coming back and reviewing those policies or those clauses?
So, most construction contracts will have clauses about delays and whether these are excusable or non-excusable. And for an excusable delay, that's something that would entitle the construction team to more time. Um, that might even include something called force majeure. That's the number one area in not just construction, but leases, delivery contracts, just about every contract right now. Um, is there something in the contract that says that you're entitled to time because these events occur? So it's important first for the parties to look at their contracts and see, to what will they be entitled when this is happening. Every state treats those clauses differently. So, for example, in New York, the courts typically look at those clauses to see what's specifically identified as a delay event, an excusable delay, or a force majeure event. Other states may take a broader view. And so, but whatever the clauses say, is it's important for the project participants to monitor the schedule. And the best practices is to set a baseline of where was the project before this delay event occurred. And then from there, because the project may already have been delayed. And so there are plenty of projects where there are already delays. Now this is happening on top of it. And so down the road, when somebody is hoping to recover for it or defend against it, it's important to be able to say, well, what delay was actually caused by the COVID-19, the pandemic? And so working with scheduling people, that real expertise, scheduling is always the toughest issue to deal with on projects, especially with claims. It requires a lot of specificity, a lot of different factors. You probably are familiar with this, something called concurrent delays. There may have been other delays happening at exactly the same time. And if there are concurrent delays, the contract will say, well, if there was this other delay, you don't get the extension from COVID-19. So all of that is to say, it's be very important to look at what the contract says and then work with a scheduling expert to track how the delay was caused by COVID-19. And that may relate. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, 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 no. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Just go. Sorry, keep going.
So the things to be looking at will be the sequencing of the
Mm,
trades, what kinds of hours can people work because of safety guidelines and the social distancing. That will change the number of people on the project site. That will change how they're allowed to work. Can work be coordinated in a different way? And so these will all be ways to try to manage a delay, because parties still should be mitigating whatever delays there are to the extent they can.
What's clear to see from and hear from what you're saying is it's complex. Every situation is its own situation, and
That's true.
therefore you need to look at it in isolation and understand and go through those different terms. What is the best way that parties can work together through this process so that both are able to achieve their outcomes?
So, I'm glad you brought that up because if ever there's a time for parties to try to work collaboratively, it's now. And so I think the most successful projects will be the ones on which owners, the construction team, and the design team try to work together here to mitigate against all of these issues. And so they should be communicating frequently, even if whether or not a project's shut down temporarily or moving forward, they should still continue with their frequent meetings that obviously can be done virtually and remotely, and they should be exchanging plans and try to work together. So, for example, the resequencing, maybe there is work that could be done that they hadn't thought about before, but they can move the schedule around. And we've dealt with that on projects where the owner's rep sent out information to work with the construction team to figure out, all right, certain work can't go forward right now, but with this other work, what can we do? And can we plan this together to move that work forward so that when we are able to, hopefully sooner than later, move past this, the project will be able to continue at a good pace.
No, that's great, and it's we're all in this together. It's no one's fault. So I mean, I think that's the spirit that I'm certainly seeing within the industry, and I'm sure there are a few people that are not playing nicely in the sandpit, but that's just sometimes the way it happens. So obviously, I have to imagine that each week you are receiving questions that just stump you, that are completely new ways, things you probably hadn't even envisioned before. Is Have you received any of those this last week?
Yes, and so there are, and it's always interesting because everything is moving in real time, and some of this is unprecedented, and some of it is, well, even if it's unprecedented, we've dealt with delays before, so how do we fit that in? So a couple of the questions that I've recently received, if a project is shut down and so we can't do any work there, are we permitted to deliver materials to that project site, open up the gates, deliver the material, and leave? Um, and so we're taking a look at that. Another question that's very interesting is a project has been shut down, and now what about the insurance that's in place from the construction side to cover theft and cover vandalism? Does that still cover everything during a shutdown? Another very interesting question is projects moving forward. And now we just found out that a subcontractor, an employee, has COVID-19, came to the project, exposed several people. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the subcontractor? How do we deal with the rest of the team? Rumors spread quickly. I believe there was a project in New York where a large scale project where rumors were spread that some employees of one company had tested positive for COVID-19 after being at the project, and it wound up shutting down the whole project for a day. And then they figured out that it wasn't accurate information. So it's talking to the companies about the communication strategy, this insurance strategy, the issue about how to deal with projects that are shut down versus open, and the questions. It's every day very interesting questions and important questions.
Those are great questions, and they're quite obvious questions, but actually people will get to them in different phases as the projects advance, right? So I'll look forward, no pressure on you, Mark, but I look forward to hearing some of your insights next week, perhaps on some of these questions and sort of what guidance you have or how you would advise on these topics. But Mark, for now, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving time. I appreciate you communicating and sort of helping the industry at this time. Thank you, man.
Well, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
No, thank you, man. All right. Have a great day. Take care.
You too. Bye.